Dearly beloved, thank you for clicking on this YouTube video. Today we mourn the passing of this, our family television set. It served our family well and faithfully for several years until it took a toy to the corner, and now it is no more. It will be remembered by its predecessor and now successor, this much smaller TV. May it rest in peace. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Melissa, but subscribers can call me Missy. Today you saw me bidding a fond farewell to a television set that fell victim to my children. With that television set gone, I'm going to be turning my attention to another piece of entertainment related equipment in my house. I had a projector hung up downstairs in my family room. It did eventually come crashing down. The projector does still work just fine. It is just no longer affixed to the ceiling, and I need to remedy that. There were a couple of problems with the projector. There wasn't a wonderful place to put the cords that hooked up to my streaming device. We had to hook it up to a speaker, so we had to have an extra long cord. That cord would kind of just be hanging up overhead. And so today I am planning on building a thing. Let me talk a little bit about what my plans are for that. My plan for this thing is going to be kind of like a shelf system, but I just want it to feel fantastical to some degree. So here's the idea. This is the basic shape that I kind of want to start with the ends having this like hexagonal shape to it, and then the proportions on this drawing are horrible, but here we're gonna have these little housings where we can put our speakers. Right now I just have little speakers that are gonna sit in either one of those. And then up above these archways is gonna be some decorative motifs. I'm doing a terrible job at drawing this right now. That's the plan. Let's get working on it. I don't care how it looks to go to the hardware store while still in my morning clothes, okay? We lay the dead to rest and then we take care of the living entertainment devices. This is how the world works. It's time. You can see the holes. Those are where the actual stud is, so I just missed it. Here's a better illustration of what I'm gonna try and achieve. This is my work on trying to figure out the angle. I'm gonna need to cut this wood at an angle like this. So to begin with, I needed my foundational pieces. In this instance, that meant the top and the bottom of my thing, which I decided I wanted to be 3 feet long because I had bought a 6-foot board and I thought that 3 feet looked like it would be nice proportions for the room and the thing overall. For aesthetics. I am not good at math, so I'm pretty proud of myself that I figured out that what I wanted was a single 90-degree angle at the very end of my boards, connecting at 2 45-degree angles at the edges of that triangle shape that gets made with the board. But it did take me an embarrassingly long time to figure it out, which I'm not showing you in this video. Then I marked out what portion of the wood that I wanted to cut out just to make sure that it was nice and precise. I did this with both of my 8 by 1 inch boards. And this is the part where I start to meditate on missing fingers because I don't want to end up with fingers detached from my body. Wow, funerals and dismemberment. This video is off to a wonderful start. So with the top and bottom pieces done and cut and flung to the side, I was ready to cut out the facing pieces out of my 10 by 1. The smaller end cap pieces needed to be cut at an angle, so once again my miter saw contorted itself, and then I could just do a regular straight cut on the long pieces.
Okay, but where was all this rain when I was doing my silly TV funeral yesterday? Huh? This is TV funeral weather.
Okay, so I am here with my pile of wood, and today I need to design my designs that I'm going to cut and carve. I need to cut a graceful archway and map out my carving pieces and get everything ready for me to beautify this projector housing. Here we go. I have already managed to track sawdust all up my stairs. So, and it was definitely me. I hope you caught that. I finally named my thing, and it shall henceforth be known as a projector housing. Anyways, I'm gonna have to have another funeral when I run out of this roll of butcher paper that I got at the thrift store for like $5. Awesome find. If you ever find a roll of butcher paper at the thrift store and you're like, I'm not sure I'm gonna get it, I put it in my cart and took it out several times, and now I'm so glad I bought it. So I just traced out the wood that will become the face of the housing, and I'm figuring out how wide I want the center arch to be. I also needed to figure out how tall I wanted the center arch to be so that the projector could hang down in the middle of that arch. I ended up drawing and redrawing the arches a few times just to make sure that I really liked the proportions, as well as the overall shape of all of the arches. I also drew out other design elements, which ultimately ended up being just to see what it looked like, because I didn't actually use the template to figure out any of the interior shaping that I needed to do. Then, in order to make sure it was symmetrical, I folded it in half before cutting everything out. And I used an X-Acto knife in order to cut out the side arches because it would just be a pain to try and use scissors. I had the knife. Then I traced the end cap pieces and went ahead and did a similar thing with those, trying to make sure that it would proportionally match up with the other facings. And once again, I did more steps than was necessary because I thought I might use it more extensively than I actually ended up doing. But that's just kind of how the creative process works. At least that's how my creative process works. I kind of just fly by the seat of my pants, and the thing is, I think that I have a plan, but my plan is never as extensive as I think my plan is. I mean, there are always little details to work out as I go along, you know? Especially when it's something that I've never done before. I've never made a projector housing before. I didn't even have a word for what it was until, you know, recently. So of course my template needed to be traced out onto my wood, but because I had already marked out the proportions on the paper, I knew exactly how to mark them out on the wood. So that actually worked out pretty nicely, I guess. With all of my arches traced out, I was ready to go ahead and start sawing again. This time I used my ancient jigsaw that I got at a yard sale for like $2. I didn't even know if it was going to work until I got it home and plugged it in. But I'm really glad that it did work because now I'm able to use it in projects like this. I really need a better way to set up my wood. This was a little bit awkward to be cutting the piece like this, but it worked out. And ooh, look at that graceful archway. Now I just have to do the other archways. But if it was awkward cutting out these long pieces, it was even more so to cut out the smaller pieces. And I haven't even gotten to the small detail parts. Just wait till you see that. But I got all of my arches done and I was feeling really optimistic at this point. The next step to complete my vision was to go ahead and route it to about half as thick as the wood actually is, so approximately half an inch deep. It's odd because even though they call these 10 by 1 boards, it's not actually 10 by 1 inches. It's a weird in-betweensy kind of, I don't know. The measurements are so weird. Anyways, if you're wondering what I'm listening to on my headphones, I'm not. It's literally just there as ear protection because this thing is loud. And if I was even to try to listen to something on my headphones, I wouldn't be able to listen to something on my headphones because it's loud. Although I did think it was kind of cute watching this footage back. I thought that like my posture all hunched over trying to look through the little window of the router so that I can get it as exact as possibly against my lines makes me look a little bit like a hamster hunched over the thing that is creating all of the sawdust for my little hamster cage that I'm gonna roll around in. Although I didn't actually roll around in it, it looked like I did because I got covered in sawdust. I also had to clamp and reclamp a few times because the clamps were just awkward in the positioning as I was trying to route the whole thing. Also, I don't think this wood was completely dry because it wanted to stick into the corners of the wood. Anyways, at this point I was done being a little woodworking hamster because I had to start cutting out the cutouts. You'll see. I got the first one done. It looks so cool. I am so covered in sawdust right now. I think that looks really cool. And I couldn't help myself. I had to set it all up so I could more clearly envision my vision. It's another day. I have a lot of work to do, so let's do it. Even though I no longer had to be hunched over like a little woodworking hamster with my router, I still had to get on the hamster wheel of drilling holes and then cutting those holes out with my jigsaw. And holy cow, there were a lot of holes to drill and cut out with my jigsaw. And I didn't even get all of the holes drilled when I was doing the hole drilling. As I was doing the jigsawing, I noticed a few that I missed drilling before. The other hamster thing that I couldn't escape was the sawdust. There was still a fairly good amount of sawdust involved. Although thankfully not nearly as much as with the router. And predictably, I did a terrible job at keeping my workspace clean. There were wood chunks all over the floor that I was kicking under the table constantly. And I did try to grab the broom to sweep it up a few times, but like my brain was fixated on getting this done and I could not work that broom for the life of me. I don't know. It was weird. Are you tired of watching me cut these little holes out? I hope not, because we're not done yet. There are so many holes. This was by far the most time-consuming part of this entire project. But as time-consuming as it was, it had to be done. If you're wondering what the heck this design is based off of, it's supposed to look kind of like roots coming down into the earth and spreading out, because that's kind of the concept for this space, is just like an underground den with roots coming in around it. But when I was finally done with all of that, I was ready to start shaping all of these little root pieces. And this was probably the most tedious part. I had to go in with my Dremel, and there were places where the roots are kind of overlapping, so I had to take out a little bit more material in those areas. And then I wanted to round out at least the front facing side of each of those so that they look like rounded out roots. And this was really difficult to get footage of because I kept shifting and moving around the wood and moving my body around, but hopefully you get the idea. It was a lot more shaping with my rotary tool and just headache. I think honestly this is where I started to get sore muscles because it was quite a lot. And once all of those pieces were shaped, I was ready to get rid of all of the pencil and marker lines, so I did that by sanding the faces down. It was at about this point that I noticed that some of the lines that I routed out with my router looked a little shaky, but I think all of the detail helped to distract from some of that shakiness. I decided I wanted this projector armature that was going to hold my projector to be actually encased in the wood with the long piece poking out. So I routed out a circle so that it could fit flush up against the ceiling. After that was done, I had to cut a hole out so that the bottom piece could poke through. I could have gone to my shed and gotten some tools to make this circle perfectly round, but I decided to just strong arm it with my jigsaw. No one was going to see it. It did not turn out perfectly round. That was okay. It wasn't going to be a major feature. Then I went and drilled some countersink holes into the base, which I then routed with a decorative router bit in order to give it a little bit of a fancy shape. I don't know, I just thought it would look nicer. And here I am assembling the entire box. I started by screwing the bottom pieces in. I didn't worry too much about the screws showing. I wasn't sure how it would look, but actually it ended up looking fine because I countersinked the holes, and so the screws kind of just disappear into the wood. And then I took the whole thing out onto my porch in order to stain it. And at first I thought that I could just kind of soak it really well with a rag, but that wasn't doing the trick to get the stain into all of the little crevices and creases. So I ended up having to get a small paintbrush and painting it into all of those little places, and it took a lot longer than I thought it would. Story of my life.
It's another day, and I'm honestly not sure if I'm feeling sore all over because I am getting sick or if it's because of the work I did yesterday. But we're gonna get this thing hung up. My husband's gonna help me before he runs to work.
First things first, I needed to determine where the center of my box was from the inside, because my idea was to line up the points of the box with the line that I drew in the ceiling as to where the wood support is. And then I would be able to just screw the whole thing into that support beam. And I had to use my impact drill because my regular drill was way too big to fit inside the box. And I was actually lucky that this impact drill fit in there. And then my camera wouldn't focus, probably because it had so much sawdust on it. Honestly, I think this was my fault. But we got it hung up with 2 screws at first, made sure they were nice and tight and it wasn't wobbling. And then my husband had to go off to work. These are the screws that I used, and I just did a couple more on the end pieces to make sure that it was nice and secure. And here's a view from the inside of me setting things up. That side of the box that you see me working on actually had the bulk of the cords because all of the input slots on the projector were on that side. Finally, I had gotten a little surge protector extension that I could run out to the little outlet that's in my ceiling, and some cord management pieces that I was able to use to affix that wire to the ceiling. Nice and tidy. Just this one adjustment feels like such an upgrade from what we had before with the cord hanging there. I also used some of these cord management strips and painted them to put them inside the projector housing to manage some of those cords. I'm so glad that it's done. It was a lot of work. I'm really happy that I went to the extra effort of making it more aesthetic. I think that it will lend itself to the vision that I have for this room ultimately. I'm really happy with the design. I feel like it works very well. The fit is a little tight. I feel confident that I would be able to put in new speakers if I ever wanted to. Definitely ready for some rest and relaxation. So I am going to take my popcorn and watch something with my projector. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked anything about that video, please hit the like button. And if you would like to see more of what I do home improvement projects, I do art, I do sewing, and I just do some other random nonsense. But if you'd like to follow me along, please subscribe, and then I can see you in the next one. Bye.